Hi, I'm Tyler Fertel here, joined by NFL Network anchor and Jomboy Media podcast host, Chris Rose. Chris, thank you very, very much for joining me here today.
Tyler, it is my pleasure, and I'm not doing this just because you're a buddy of my son Brady. I'm doing this because I want to be here. So let's go to work, dude.
Yeah, and it's an honor to have you on the podcast. You're an extremely accomplished sportscaster, and we have so much to talk about today. And I want to start from not in your professional career, but from what you did in college. So you went to Miami University, in your home state of Ohio, and you actually worked for the radio kind of broadcast network there, and really got some firsthand experience before you actually even entered your professional career. And you got the experience of being on air and really doing a radio show and being part of that channel before you did it as a career. And so I just really wanted to talk a little bit about how those firsthand experiences really helped you in your professional career and really prepared you for what was to come.
Well, it's a really good question. I'm going to start off by saying that I've been a sports junkie my entire life, and now it's so accessible. You can get it on any TV, any streaming device, any game you want. But when I was growing up, that wasn't the case. You know, we had a couple channels on cable television and you could watch things here or there. But, you know, when I was growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, not every baseball game was on. I mean, maybe 3 times a week I'd get to watch my hometown team.
Mm-hmm.
But I was a huge sports fan. I knew I wanted to do something in the sports world. I didn't know if I wanted to work for a team. I didn't know if I wanted to cover them professionally. I had no idea. But I started to figure it out when I went to college. I actually started at the University of Michigan and then transferred after my freshman year down to Miami.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got to Miami, I asked somebody, I said, "Hey, they've got a student radio station, right?" "Yep." And then I went in, I talked to the GM. I said, "Well, what's your sports coverage like?" I go, "Well, we have a small sports department. They do some updates on what's going on." I said, "Y'all don't call the games?" And they said, "No, we don't call the games." I said, "Well, I'm going to change that." So I had like 3 days in school there, and I march into the sports information director's office, a guy named Brian Teeter. So he's in charge of all of the sports at Miami University. He doesn't have any supposed interest in the radio station or anything else, but he was a youngish guy. He was probably in his late 20s. And I introduced myself. I said, "Listen, this is what I want to do for a living. And I want I want to give students the opportunity to broadcast these games on radio. Like, it's something I've always dreamt about doing." So he was very receptive, helped set it up. By the time I was done there, we were broadcasting the football games, the baseball games, men's and women's basketball, hockey. And we started to get it so that people could be interested in this. And they might want to go to school and say, "Hey, this is something I want to do."
Hmm.
So, you know, on Saturday mornings when a lot of people were recovering from a night out, I was driving to Bowling Green, Ohio. I was driving to Eastern Michigan. I was driving to Ball State. I was driving to Indiana University, where we played a football game one year, because this was my passion, and I just loved it. And that kind of allowed me to start to carve my path in this crazy broadcasting world, and it's something that I won't ever forget.
Mm-hmm. And after getting all of that experience, really creating your own at Miami University's radio station and really starting your almost career in sports, how did you get your foot into the door at places like Fox, where you went later on in your professional career? And what steps did you take to kind of get it started for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, you don't just go right from WMSR, Miami Student Radio, to CNN or Fox or anything else. But I had a lot of wonderful internships during the summer of my college stay. One time I interned at a radio station in Cleveland, and part of my job was to go cover the then Indians, go get post-game interviews. And this is when they were terrible in the early 90s. I mean, horrible. The year I covered them, they went 57 and 105.
Wow.
I mean, ugh, they were horrible. But I would sit there and I'd get to interview the manager, interview the players after the game. I would sit behind home plate when nobody would go to the game and pretend to broadcast. I'd get all the game notes. I'd practice my play-by-play. People would look at me like, "Why the hell is that guy talking to himself?" But it was so I could get better.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I did that. I did an internship at CNN in Atlanta
Wow.
for 2 months before my senior year in college. I had another internship in Cincinnati during my senior year at Miami. And all that set me up to go work at the ABC affiliate in town. 1 week after I graduated from college, I was running studio camera at the ABC affiliate in Cincinnati. And the reason I got that job was because one of my professors, whom I loved, Professor Hugh Morgan, had taught the weekend sports anchor, a woman named Cammie Durking. We didn't know each other, but we were both Miami grads. He set me up on an interview with her. She got me into the building. I met with a guy named Tom Succo. He was the head of the production department. He was like, you get to run studio camera. And I was like, yes. I was in a building, but I was talking to professionals that were on air. Sometimes I would go out with Cammie on stories just on my own time. I was making a whopping $4.85 an hour and working less than 30 hours a week because I was part-time. But I was pursuing a passion, something I loved, something I wanted to do. And eventually I started hopping up on the anchor desk and doing resume reels, like fake broadcasts. And I sent tapes out to 20 different stations around the country, like High Point, North Carolina, Tallahassee, Florida, places in Texas I had never heard of, out west, some cities in California. And I got rejected, I think, from 19 different places. And I was thinking about quitting, to be honest with you. And I could have gone back to Cleveland, and my dad probably could have figured out a place where I could have worked somewhere and whatever. But he was like, if you quit, then you're going to quit, and it's going to be over. But this is something you've been passionate about since you were a little kid, so you got to keep trying. And I did. It took me 2.5 years to get a full-time on-air job. I got a great weekend sports producer job in Cincinnati, Ohio. I had a great mentor named Kevin Frazier who, helped direct me and told me what to work on. And I eventually got a great job in Reno, Nevada. And if you think about it this way, it's like being in minor league baseball. Like, you get all these reps and nobody gets to see your mistakes. So it was perfect.
And once you kind of got these positions, I mean, it's a complicated process of kind of getting to where you want to be, because it's hard to stay in one position and keep kind of moving your way up in the industry. I mean, you kind of have to bounce around if you're trying to look for the best possible fit. But when you're going to these places, I mean, you went from your home state all the way to Reno, Nevada, and you probably went to a dozen different places, went during your jobs there and after and before. And so how do you really know what is the right fit for your career, and what if you know you're making the best decision for your career?
You got to be willing to take a chance. I didn't know one person in Reno, Nevada. I didn't know one. I didn't even know where it was. When I got the job, I was leaving Cincinnati, and all my buddies were like, oh, man, that's awesome. You're going to hang out in Vegas all the time? So I get to Reno, and I said, yeah, how close are we to Vegas? They're like, it's an 8-hour drive, you moron. I was like, oh, I guess I won't be going to Vegas very often. So I went out there not knowing anybody, not even knowing where the heck it was, you know? I mean, I thought it was like an hour or two from Las Vegas. It wasn't. So it was an amazing stop on the tour, because I understood a lot of the business, because I had been a sports producer for 2.5 years. So I understood kind of what made a good story. I understood how to edit video for highlights in a show. I understood how to start to interview people. But when I got to Reno, all I had to work on was honing my craft. And that is being as good a broadcaster as I could be. I went out there. I was a weekend sports anchor, and I covered everything. I would cover the University of Nevada. I would cover a lot of high school stuff. I covered the Reno Rodeo. I mean, I covered all sorts of stuff that I never thought I'd cover. And it was great. And I was there exactly 13 months before I got a job at CNN in Atlanta. And I got down there at 25 years old, and it is like the big leagues. I was sitting with all of these people whom I grew up watching. Nick Charles, Jim Huber, Bob Lorenz, Vince Cellini, Fred Hickman. I mean, we're talking about the studs of the studs in this industry. And I was sitting right next to him. I said, Fred Hickman's right next to me. 2 chairs down is Nick Charles. Vince Cellini's right here. Bob Lorenz is right over there. And I didn't say a word. I mean, Vince actually was an anchor in Cleveland when I was growing up there. And I told him, I said, Vince, like, I grew up watching you. And Vince is probably 12, 13 years older than I am, maybe 15 years older. And he'd always walk in and he'd be like, hey, Chris, want to go get some ice cream? Like, I was just a little kid. I looked so young. All that. I looked like you do right now. But I was 25 instead of almost 18. So it was a great experience. I was there exactly 3 years and then just got a job at Fox. And it started to take off really at that point. But when do you know? You know when you've kind of exhausted everything you can at a place. I had learned, I had grown a lot at CNN, but I did need more consistent roles as I got into my late 20s. And it happened at Fox, and it happened fast.
Mm-hmm. And did this kind of grow, like this passion for sports broadcasting, sports anchoring, sportscasting overall, did this make the transitions between Reno, Nevada and CNN and Fox, did it make it easier for you to kind of fit in there and kind of get used to the flow of things more quickly, more easily? Or did it, no matter what was it a process for you to kind of get ready and get used to your new job?
Well, when I went to Reno, it was nerve-wracking because I just hadn't done it every day. I had done some on-air work in Cincinnati, but very little. So when I got to Reno, I had to really kind of figure out, you have to figure out who you are. You know, once you get in front of a microphone, I always think it's important to be exactly who you are. I don't think everybody is, but I think that people can tell when you're not being genuine. And I always feel like it's important to be exactly who you are. So to feel comfortable in your own skin is really a big part of this industry. When I got to CNN, that was really nerve-wracking. Like I said, I'm around people who are legends in this industry, and I just wanted to not screw up and not say anything that was stupid and not embarrass the company. And so I was, you know, I'm kind of a mouthy guy. Like, I like to have fun, but in CNN, I was like ripping that thing because I just didn't want to be out of line at all. And fortunately, I wasn't. I got along with a lot of people. There were a lot of people who were looking out for me, and I was really appreciative of that. And then when you get to Fox, I knew a few of the people that were out there already. My mentor, Kevin Frazier, was already there. He was an anchor there, and that was really, really helpful. So all that stuff just worked out great for me, and I have loved every place that I have been. There isn't one place where I'm like, Jesus, this really sucks, because that happens to some people. They get stuck, and when there's nothing worse than being around a miserable person in this industry because they can drag down an entire room. And so I have tried to be energetic and enthusiastic and appreciative throughout my run.
And at Fox, you got to really, I mean, you were a play-by-play person for the NFL. I mean, you got to be a play-by-play announcer on the highest stage. I mean, when you think of Fox, you think of NFL broadcasts at 10 p.m. or 10 a.m., sorry, and 1 p.m. And I mean, that's just like the signature thing. So what was it kind of probably throughout your childhood watching games on Fox and seeing these anchors and announcers and broadcasters really be your idols and everything, and then knowing that you were that for the next generation and that was who you are now?
So a few things. Fox didn't get the contract until I was working in Cincinnati at the Fox affiliate as a weekend sports producer.
Oh,
I was there when it made the move from CBS to Fox, and it was a big deal, big deal. So I lived through that. But you're right in one sense. Like, I grew up watching the NFL on CBS and the NFL on NBC. I mean, that's how I spent my Sundays. It's a huge reason why I got into this industry. So, you know, that stuff didn't come along for me until several years into my Fox stint. You know, I got there and I was doing a show called the National Sports Report. These days, think of it as FS1, okay? So it was Fox Sports Network back then. It was the cable side of Fox. And we were the equivalent of Sports Center. We were trying to go head-to-head with them, and we had a lot of talented people, right? And in addition to Kevin Frazier, it was Keith Olbermann, Chris Myers, Jeannie Zelasco, Lionel Bienvenu, a lot of really, really high-end people. And I was somebody in my late 20s there still trying to find my way. And a little over a year into it, they said, listen, we're starting a new show, and it's called The Best Damn Sports Show, period. And you're too young to know about it, but it was the first of its kind. It was the first show where athletes could feel comfortable talking about a sport that wasn't their own. These days, you see it all over the place, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Shannon Sharp on his show with Skip Bayless until recently. You'll see it on Mike Greenberg's show in the morning. You'll see it on Stephen A's. That came because we started it. For better or worse, that we were the first show to kind of take that leap. And it wasn't a show for everybody, but we combined sports and comedy, entertainment. We thought that sports was being taken a little too seriously, and we kind of carved our own niche. If the show had started 6 years later, it would have been enormous, but it wasn't. There were just a few logistical hurdles that kind of got in the way, I thought. But that opened some doors for me. It opened the doors where I could be the host for the college football, the BCS on Fox, where I got to hand out the trophy to national champions. I got to be the host of Fox Saturday Baseball from 2009 through 2011 for 3 years. I was there when the Yankees, Giants, and Cardinals all won the World Series. I'm on the stage with them. It was amazing. Then I got a chance to call some games, and that's unbelievable. I mean, I even got to call a Browns game on Fox, my childhood team. Hung on for a last-second win against the Carolina Panthers when John Carney missed or John Casey missed a 44-yard field goal or something. But, yeah, like, it was great. It was unbelievable, and just to be able to do all that stuff. Like, I used to broadcast games with my brother when we would plug a microphone into a thing called a VCR. I used to do that when I was like 12 or 13, the Browns were playing on TV or the Cavs were playing on TV. And then I was doing it for a living. That's unbelievable.
And you did this a little bit at Fox, but you've done it more kind of moving into your job now with NFL Network. But you do shows on NFL Sundays where you are basically informing your audience of what is going on now. I mean, whether it was at the previous games, like if you're doing it at the 1 p.m. time, you might be talking about the 10 a.m. games. But if there's breaking news, you tell your audience as quick as possible. And so I'm just wondering, how do you kind of try to expect the unexpected and really work on the fly like that, just always ready to break the news that everyone's like waiting to hear? I mean, you have to stay on script and you have to stay you have to have the mindset of reporting what you need to report, but at the same time, always in the back of the head, is there something that tells you, oh, like something could happen any second? I need to be ready to shift to that.
Yeah, you do. But that's the fun part of this business. As I always explain to people, they don't pay the pilots when it's smooth skies. They pay them because there's turbulence in the air and you want to get people feeling good about their flight and getting them down safely. That's the reason you pay the pilots. When you have a show where everything goes perfectly, everything's on time, there's no breaking news, we know exactly what story's next, all the highlights are done. A lot of people that can do that and do it pretty well. It's when things go crazy, which is where you earn your money as a host, in my opinion. And that's why Sunday's highlight shows are the best. My most crazy hour of every week during the fall is from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern. That's when all the games are finished before the NBC Sunday night game. I have seen the highlights of maybe 6 or 7, but I've got 5 or 6 that are flying at me that I haven't seen the highlights. So literally, you might see me on camera and I'm saying, Patrick Mahomes has never lost to the Denver Broncos. He is 12-0 in his career against them. Kansas City's putting up 37 points per game. It is unbelievable, blah, blah, blah. We go to the highlight, and the person who edited the 3-minute highlight is handing me the piece of paper. So now I am looking at it for the first time, just like you are at home. Now, did I see some of the plays of the first half before I had to really hunker down and get ready for the rest of my show? Yeah, probably. But one thing I did during the week to prepare for it was I get a 200-page research packet that breaks down all of the games every week. We have an amazing research group, and each game is 8 to 10 pages, depending on its importance, right? So I'll go through it, and I'll break it down, and I'll, take the most important 10 to 15 points that are in those 10 pages and put them on a card so that when that's happening, let's say Travis Kelce has caught a touchdown in 6 straight games against the Broncos. I know that going into that highlight. Well, if he scores a touchdown, I can say, Travis Kelce, 7 straight games he scored a touchdown against the Broncos. It's just a little extra piece of information that people may not have known, but is good for them to know. So it's your ability to go out and prepare so that Sunday at 7:30 Eastern, you aren't looking at this stuff for the first time saying, well, what the hell's going on? That's the worst feeling in the world, is not knowing exactly what you're doing.
And I know the NFL networks, like their headquarters are directly next to SoFi Stadium. And so I feel like when you're doing your shows, there's probably games going on sometimes. And have you ever thought about looking over to see what's going on? You hear the noise and you're like, oh, I know I have a highlight going on, or I have a highlight I'm going to have to report in a quick second. Cooper Kupp touchdown, Justin Herbert rushing touchdown. Does that ever happen to you? That's got to be cool.
It is cool that we're right there. Now, the way that SoFi is configured, you can't see in the stadium.
Oh, yeah.
But to my left, just off to the side of the desk, I've got a big monitor that they will put in there let's say 4 or 5 afternoon games, so I can kind of keep an eye on it for the last few minutes before my show comes on. But, like a couple of years ago, I don't know if you remember the Kyler Murray Hail Mary to D-Hop against Buffalo.
Yeah.
So that happened 30 seconds before we were coming on. And I was like, guys, we've got to lead with it. And they were like, well, we can show that play, but we don't have the full highlight. It's just not ready yet. Sometimes you have to wait for these things. I was like, okay, well, let's show it. So we totally threw out the rundown, and I welcomed everybody in, and I said, you are not going to believe what just happened out in Arizona. So, boom, we show that play. Cardinals win. They're celebrating. We'll have a complete highlight of this game coming up a little bit later. And then, boom, we go to another game. And that's just the fun. It is such a fast-paced show. It's an hour long, but it feels like it's like 7 minutes. It is fast. There's a lot of stuff going on. Your producer's in your ear just telling you what's next. Hey, I've got the Raiders, Chargers highlight flying in next.
Wow.
Boom.
That's what happens.
You've got to be able to listen to that, not stumble over your words, get a hold of the we call them shot sheets. Essentially, it's a play-by-play of what is happening on the screen, and you can read along. They don't decorate it, I like to say. It's like the bare bones. It'll say, like, Chargers ball, scoreless game, first quarter, Justin Herbert, 17-yard touchdown, Keenan Allen. And it's your job to make it come to life, right? They're not going to tell you the words to say. Just give me the basics. I'll take care of the rest.
Yeah, and obviously on camera, you're alone. I mean, in the studio on camera, you're alone. And I feel like that has to be, you've been doing it for a good amount of time, but at the same time, it just has to be scary knowing that the production is kind of surrounded around you. So how have you really became more comfortable with that idea? Because you do have a lot of help. Obviously, you have your producers and you have your writers and you have everyone that's kind of behind the scenes, but on camera, the accountability goes to you. So how do you just kind of handle all of that?
You're the face of the team, but you can't do this by yourself, right? The producer has to know when the highlight's ready. They're making contact with our point person in the back, Zach, who does an amazing job rounding up all of our, each game has one kid who's watching the game and then an editor. So every game has 2 people assigned to it, and they're going through it. And, you might see me at the end of the day, but the number of people it takes to put on a 1-hour production on Sunday of a game day is unbelievable. Everybody in the control room, they got to know where they're going next. They got to know what graphics they need. They got to know what tape they're rolling, all that sort of stuff. But have there been times where they come on camera and things aren't ready? Yeah, but that's where you just kind of have fun with it. You're like, hey, listen, we're going to get to the Eagles Commanders highlight in just a bit. And then you might make something up. Jalen Hurts has been playing great so far through 9 weeks this year. He's got 7 rushing touchdowns. He's got his favorite target, A.J. Brown, who's done a great job this year in his first season coming over from Tennessee. You just take a deep breath, and at the end of the day, even if something happens, we're all going to be okay. It's just TV. That's it. You're all good.
Yeah, and this fun aspect of sports. You get to be involved in something that makes you happy. And I feel like that's all you can hope for and pray for in a kind of profession. And that's why so many people like you and like hopefully me are hoping to go into this industry. And is that what really appealed to you about Jomboy Media, was this idea of both combining a production with this idea of sports being fun and being really a community?
Yeah, I mean, I've had the good fortune, like I said, of working on some shows that are right out of the gate new, right? Best Damn Sports Show. There had been nothing like it before. When I went to MLB Network, Intentional Talk, there hadn't been anything like that before. The common thread is we don't take ourselves seriously. You have fun. You got to know what the hell you're talking about, because at the end of the day, people won't buy what you're saying if they don't think that there's any truth behind your points. But it's sports. I mean, it is sports. Is it big business? Absolutely. Do people care about it? Immensely. It's sports. Let's have some fun. And so I had known Jimmy and Jake a little while. After my contract wasn't renewed at MLB Network, I still wanted to have a voice in the baseball world, and I loved what they were about, and they haven't disappointed. Now, do we have some growing to do as a company? Absolutely. It's still a very, very young company. It's a little bit over 5 years old. But I think the number one thing that you'll hear about Jomboy Media is, God, you guys have a blast. And they call me the Jomboy Media dad, because, like, I'm twice as old as virtually everybody there, and that's okay. I appreciate it that they know I've got a role, that if they have any questions about how to do things, if I can help out, I'm there for them. I get to be the play-by-play voice of all of the warehouse game stuff. So whether it's blitzball, floorball, which we just did another season of, ball and play league, or anything else that's going to be invented inside of that amazing, crazy joint, I get to be a part of it, and that's pretty cool.
And in addition to doing all of that for Jomboy, and obviously you have the Baseball Today podcast, which you have a little you're set up behind there for, but you also have this amazing podcast literally called the Chris Rose Rotation. I mean, it is your podcast, and you have all these players that come onto your podcast, kind of like guest appearances, but almost not, because they're kind of on with regularity. And it's Trevor May and Steven Brault and Miguel Rojas, who's an LA guy now too as well. And then Tyler Glasnow, Lucas Giolito, who's also in LA now at the Angels. And then Austin Hedges, former Padre, just for a little bit, but I remember him catcher for my team. But just how much fun is that to really be talking with guys in the league while they're still playing in the league, and just talking baseball with them on Jomboy?
It's great. And it's talking about more than baseball. I think that's the key, is that for a long time, before Intentional Talk started, people said, my God, baseball, 24-hour baseball network, like, baseball players are so boring. And the truth of it is that they're not boring. The way we covered the sport was boring, and we kind of did a disservice, I think, to people. And so, you know, being able to interview these guys and chop it up with them, and they're my co-hosts, is what they are. They're on every few weeks. It's great to kind of get a peek into their lives. And when I feel great when somebody writes in the comments on our YouTube channel, you know, I'm a big Yankees fan, and I can't stand the Tampa Bay Rays, but I love Tyler Glasnow. Like, I think he's great, and I'll root for him every time he's not pitching against the Yankees. That's a win, right? That means that we have introduced people to the human side. We get to watch these guys 3 hours every night, go battle, and then we don't know anything else about them. It's our job to introduce them to the rest of the world. And I think we've done a pretty good job over the 2.5 years we've had it.
And I think you brought up a really, really cool point there is, well, sports is a business. I mean, every single person that is a part of it, every single person that creates this business production is a human, and you have to kind of understand that to understand what sports is all about. And I think it's something that people struggle to kind of realize, because it's almost like everything's in the big bright lights nowadays. So it's really creating accessibility amongst these players. I think what you're doing with the Chris Rose Rotation is really cool. I'm definitely tuning in. So that it's really, really awesome. I think it's something very unique in the sports world. I mean, you've done a lot of stuff that's very unique, like you were talking about. But this is something else that I think isn't very, like, common at all. And so I think it's super, super cool. And I want to
appreciate
talk.
that. You know what though? I want to stop you for just a second because on our most recent episode with Austin Hedges, we talked a lot about the human side of things. Austin he was drafted by the Padres over a decade ago. He had a run with them. He got traded to Cleveland.
I remember that.
Had a really nice run with them for 2+ years. And then this year signed with Pittsburgh in the offseason. For people that know baseball and know him, he is brought in to lead a pitching staff, help young guys grow, frame pitches better than anybody, throw out the occasional base stealer, and maybe he'll run into one and give you a homer. He is not Pudge Rodriguez. He is not Buster Posey. He is not Sean Murphy. He is not any of those guys at the plate, and we've all known that. So you have to understand what his role is. For the first time in his career, he got booed by the home fans. And we spent a lot of time talking about that. By the way, Sean Murphy just went. Oh, that was Riley. My bad. That would have been nice timing if Sean Murphy had just went on that comment. So my point is that he had to deal with something now almost 10 years into his big league career for the first time. And it sucked for him. Getting booed on a daily basis at home. On the road, no problem. Those guys always expect it. But, man, you get booed at home, that is earth-shaking for those dudes.
I mean, can't you,
really
like,
tough.
Like,
So,
imagine, I mean, singular fans that are doing that and, like, all together. I mean, I don't think they're kind of putting into the head what it would be for everyone else to be doing that to them. I mean, it's like, that's what I think. I mean, I'll definitely go listen to that right after this,
yeah.
But I mean, I'm guessing he talked about like the fans don't understand that he's just like them and like how he reacts to those type of things.
Well, I mean, here's the thing is that he's a professional who gets paid a lot of money to figure out how to compartmentalize that. But he did talk to us about how challenging that can be. And it is important. It doesn't mean that fans can't boo. They can. Absolutely. But with every choice that you make, there are ramifications. And I just think I think it was a really, really good discussion. I think one which a lot of people would get something out of. So give it a listen.
I will for sure. And I want to talk a little bit more about your relationship with athletes. And I think something really interesting and very surprising that I came upon when I was doing research for this interview was that at your time at Fox, you were criticized for having too personal of relationships with athletes when in the World Series with the Giants, and then also when you called Derek Jeter by his nickname. And people said that you were too close to athletes, that you didn't treat it like more of a professional relationship. And I was just wondering, when you heard that type of thing, I mean, I'm like in awe seeing something like that. I mean, what was your reaction to those reports?
The thing with Jeter, I think I called him Jeets. Yeah, I mean, could I have called him Derek? Absolutely. Could have, and that's fine. It's not like he and I are close. We definitely aren't. The next year with Brian Wilson, I did have a working relationship with him. And so when I did interview him, it was a little different than your average interview. But that's the way it goes. There's a lot of people that just like to make noise on social media, right? I mean, 95% of it is negative. There wasn't Twitter. Certainly, I don't even know if it had been around not in 2009. I mean, I think it's right around there. It's kind of when social media started to kind of take off. But I do remember after the World Series, my older sister, who was a senior in high school when I was born, so she was significantly older than me, she called and she's crying. I was like, "What is the matter, Lori?" She goes, "Oh, I'm online and all these people are saying stuff about you." I was like, "Well, there's an easy way to take care of that. Don't read it." Don't read it. Now, we all like to be liked, but the truth is that when you're doing something that is so subjective, there is no scoreboard at the end of the day for what we do. Some people are going to love it, and some people are going to hate it, even though they don't know you. They think they do, but they don't. And then it's hilarious that I look at the responses that some people get. Oh, I love this person. They're great. And I sit there, I'm like, God, they are such jerks behind the scene. If you knew how they treated some people behind the scenes, you wouldn't love them so much. But that's okay because it's an entertainment industry, right? At the end of the day, we go to a concert. We'd love it if the lead singer of your favorite band treated everybody with respect and, all that sort of stuff. But the honest God truth is for 2 hours, you just want to rock out and have fun. And the same thing goes with whether you're listening to a favorite podcast or sportscast or somebody's in the booth doing a game. You want to enjoy the game. You don't know a lot about them personally. So I just say that, are there some things that I've been bothered by? It hurts, yes, but you have to understand where it comes from. And when you learn that, it allows you to just kind of continue to do it. Because if you don't, it will eat you alive.
And in our interview today, I mean, we've talked about the plethora of positions you've had throughout your times in sportscasting. I mean, we just talked about you being an interviewer on air when you did the World Series in person there, and podcasting, anchoring, hosting. I mean, an announcer, a play-by-play guy. I mean, you've done so many things, and I think that's something that is like, you don't see that very often. I mean, a lot of people are good at one specific thing and stick to that thing throughout their career. But you've done everything that you could really ask for in sports broadcasting. And I'm really wondering, is your passion for sports the reason why you feel you're so talented through and have all this versatility? Or do you think that you've just kind of learned the craft and learned the ways of every different type of position, and it's just you enjoy them all?
I do. I try not to take a job unless I know I'm going to really enjoy it, right? I truly value my time with my family. Brady's, as you well know, entering his last year of high school. So at this time next year, he's going to be off somewhere. And, I try to plan my schedule like around his baseball schedule. There's things I've turned down because of my kids. At the end of the day, I want to be around there, right? That was really important for me in a crazy, crazy business. Did it cost me? It might have cost me some stuff, absolutely. But I'm at peace with that. I'm in my 50s now. I'm 52, and I still feel like I'm learning. All right. I do the Browns preseason package. I don't do a lot of football anymore. In fact, last year was the first time in well over a decade that I called an NFL game. So when you haven't done it for a while, you're trying to get the right cadence and tempo and all of that sort of stuff. So my point is I'm still learning. Like, there's certain things that I could walk into a studio without any prep right now in 10 minutes and feel fine, because I've done it enough. I've done thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of live content. But I went back and listened to my Browns game from the other night against Washington, and I'm kicking myself on some of the stuff that I was doing. I was like, what? I stopped the game, and I turned to my wife, and I was like, what was I doing? She's like, oh, well, what? It sounded fine. I was like, yeah, it wasn't. So I think as long as you're challenging yourself, you're always learning, and you want to get better, and you're not satisfied, I think that's the key. Like, stay hungry. And I do.
And now going into the present day, I mean, you just talked about it, but I was about to bring it up as well. I mean, you do preseason games for your favorite Browns teams. I mean, your favorite Cleveland teams, and right now you're doing it for the Browns. I mean, it's almost NFL season, and they, like you said, they played the Washington Commanders this past week. Now they're playing another NFC East team in the Philadelphia Eagles this Thursday. Are you hopping back on air to commentate for another one of your Browns games?
Yeah, so I do their preseason package. The first game was nationally televised, so we didn't have that. That was the Hall of Fame game between the Browns and Jets, so that was on NBC. Then after that, it gets shown in the local market, and then it also gets picked up by NFL Network. So I did last Friday's game against Washington, flew home. I'll fly to Philly the day before the game. I'll do the game Thursday night. I'll fly home. And then in a week, I'll fly to Kansas City and finish up the preseason schedule. And then once I'm done with that, just start getting back on my national prep so that I can know all 32 teams or the other 31 just as well as I know the Cleveland Browns.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really important for me. But this is really good for me because I get to see 4 teams in person, right? I get to see the Browns. I get to see Washington, Philadelphia, and Kansas City. So that's 2 of the Final 4, or the 2 teams that played for it all last year. Washington, which could be interesting if they get decent quarterback play. And then the Browns, which have a lot of talent. So that's really good for me to be able to do that. And plus, I spent a day with the Dallas Cowboys in their camp, so I got to see them up close. That's all very helpful.
Mm-hmm. And despite the preparation that the whole preseason is for you, what is your preparation for the singular game on Thursday? I mean, what are you really doing to really preparing to be on air? Because obviously it's not normal players. Like the big guys aren't playing. I guarantee Jalen Hurts won't play. Deshaun Watson, I don't know, because he didn't play very much last year. So I don't know if he's stepping on the field, but like Nick Chubb's not going to play. So it's not your normal big headline guys. So how do you really prepare for the more preseason games?
Yeah, the preparation for preseason is a lot more challenging, right? On game day of a Sunday, you've got 53 guys that you have to prepare for, and then that number gets cut down by 7 when they're on the inactive list. So, yeah, you've got to know a lot about a 4th-string quarterback, but it's how you weave the discussion, right? People who are listening to this is being broadcast throughout Ohio on all those affiliates, and you sit down, you are a Browns fan. So you want to know what's happening with these guys. So we're looking a lot at the last 7 to 10 spots on the roster, your 5th or 6th linebacker, your 6th cornerback, your 4th safety. We're going to be talking about the kicker who has been struggling in Cade York. We'll talk about the bottom of the wide receiver depth chart. Like the top 4 guys are set in stone.
Mm-hmm.
Those last 2 guys, who are they? All that sort of stuff. That's how you weave through the discussion. But it is important to know who's who. And, it's important to know that when Caleb Biggers comes into the game, that he's a kid that started out at Bowling Green for 3 years before transferring to Boise State. Because if he makes that interception, you want to be able to say, oh, there's Caleb Biggers, the undrafted free agent. Spent 3 years in the MAC, Bowling Green, has over 40 career college starts. Got to be there.
Yeah.
And if it's not, then you haven't done your job well enough. And there have been times where I have not done my job well enough, and I have got to be better. And that's why all day I had Brady quizzing me on the Eagles numbers. Like I know that Mario Goodrich, their 7th cornerback, is number 31. Like that's important. Josiah Scott's 33. It's
wow. Who's starting at quarterback for the Eagles? Do we know?
I mean, I don't know yet. So it'll be either Mariota, Tanner McKee from Stanford, or Ian Book, the kid out of Notre
Book,
Dame.
that's who played last game. Yeah.
So we'll see.
Have you gotten a look? I'm guessing. Have you gotten a look at quarterback on Netflix? I'm guessing that's probably pretty interesting to you. Are you?
Yeah.
If Mariota plays, I mean,
it was great. I didn't see the last episode because I was actually watching it with Brady's older brother, Josh, and then I had to go on my trip, and then he went back to San Diego. So I don't know if we're going to sit around and wait for that last episode because he might not be home for a few months. So we'll see how that goes. We might just watch it together over FaceTime or something. Yeah,
that could be something funny to bring up, or pretty cool to bring up if Mariota ends up playing. Because the stuff that he brought up in that episode, that is an inside look. Like you don't get that normally.
No, how often does a guy kind of leave the team and people they don't know what's going on with him? So it was a fascinating look. Not everybody can be Patrick Mahomes.
No.
What'd you think of it?
I haven't gotten to see every episode yet, but it's one of those things like one of the main reasons why I do this podcast because I love sports. It's been a massive part of my childhood, and I love getting an inside look through all these industry experts. And so getting that through a Netflix show is all you can ask for. getting that done and really it being put on your screen with maybe the biggest athletes, like the biggest group of athletes that there is in American sports. I mean, NFL quarterbacks are spotlighted day in and day out. And so really getting that deep inside look is not something you get very often. I'm hoping they make more. I heard that Justin Herbert doesn't want to do it, but if he is somehow watching, I would beg him to do it because I want to know more. But obviously, I mean, it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see who they get for season 2. I think they're kind of running a little okey doke on us. I think they're getting everybody to say that they're not in it, and then it'll be a surprise as to who is in it.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I don't know for a fact how that's going, but I think it's hard to turn down Peyton Manning when he calls you and says, "Hey, will you be a part of our show?"
That's true.
Some guys might be like, "Hey, listen, dude, it's not my jam. I don't want to do it. I strictly want to talk football." And by the way, Peyton can't argue that because there was nobody who came to work more prepared than that dude.
Yeah.
So he understands it. He respects it. But, like, I thought it was a big, big win for Mahomes. I think we just got to see how there is a lot of stuff flying around him outside of the football world. And, man, he has got it nailed. He has got it nailed. And he's just incredible. I find him fascinating. And I thought it was a big win for Kirk Cousins, too. I think that there was probably – now, I've talked to some guys who were teammates of his, and, you know, he's got this dorky dad feel to him. But I think that he's pretty well respected in locker rooms, even if a lot of the media takes their shots at him and feels he's overrated because he's gotten such big contracts. But let's remember, he was a 4th-round pick the same year that RG3 was taken number 2 overall.
Yeah.
He's the one who's made it now 11 years in the NFL. He's the one that's gotten multiple big-time contracts. At the end of the day, I think he's had a pretty good career for a 4th-round pick. Like, he wasn't the 4th pick. He was a 4th-round pick. And I thought that he came out looking pretty good. And I liked his coach. I thought Kevin O'Connell was great. I thought he was wonderful, but it's going to be an interesting year for that team.
That team pairing Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. I'm not going to say anything because I'm praying Quentin Johnson is insane for the Chargers, but at the same time, seeing Jordan Addison go right after is a little bit painful, knowing we could have kept him in LA. But you know what? I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking the Chargers were either going to go Jordan Addison or Zay Flowers, just for kind of a different look. They have so many big receivers, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, we have the 2 guys that can go up and get it on both sides of the field. Keenan Allen right there too. I mean, I've said it the past 3 years, but I'm praying it's our year. But we'll see. And I would love to end it quickly here today, just giving the opportunity to kind of give overarching advice to anyone kind of looking to get into what you do.
Work. You've got to work. I am constantly, even during this, I've been watching 4 baseball games. Okay? Because it's my job. This is what I do. I take it very seriously because if I feel like there's a day I take off, then I'm not doing the work that these people are paying me for. You've got to be willing to grind. Treat everybody the same. Everyone. I don't care if it's the president of a network or the person who cleans the bathrooms. Say hello, say thank you. It'll make you feel better. It will make somebody's day. Get to know them. Get to know their names. You know, my broadcast buddy, Joe Thomas, just went into the Hall of Fame 10 days ago. And so I had a chance to do my first game in Cleveland with him since his enshrinement into the Hall of Fame. And walking around the stadium with him is like walking around with the frickin' president. It is amazing. Everybody wants to stop and take their picture with him. And he doesn't say, hey, listen, I got to go. He makes time. He says thank you. He shakes hands with them. He knows everybody's name. And if you listen to his speech, he thanked all of these people who you don't know what they do on a daily basis. But it's similar in this business. Like, you cannot be successful in this industry without the help of a ton of people. So that is an important thing and that really goes for any business, but really this one where sometimes people think a little too much of themselves because they're content creators or they're on TV or whatever it is. Read, but don't read sports. Learn a second language if you think it can help you. I kick myself that I did not take my Spanish classes seriously enough in college. I wasn't good at foreign language, and it's biting me in the ass right now. I wish I could communicate in the sport where more than 30% of the players are from Latin America.
Yeah,
that's an important thing for me.
Yeah.
And I screwed that up, and I'm paying for it dearly now, I think. Find something, most importantly in this industry, that makes your heart flutter. That when you wake up at the beginning of the day, you are excited. When you put your feet on the ground, you're like, I cannot wait to get this. There's only a handful of days over the last 25 plus years I've been doing this where I haven't wanted to go to work. And usually it's because there's something going on with my family. It really doesn't have anything to do with work, but rather real life. So the fact that I am excited and motivated to continue to do it means that I've picked the right industry.
Mm-hmm.
And you might get frustrated. There are jobs where I felt like I was the right person for it and didn't get picked, and you have to deal with that. Don't ever say, damn it, why? It's unfair they went with somebody else. You just have to be better. End of the day, I wasn't good enough, and that stinks. So stay motivated, treat people the right way, find something that gets you excited about it, challenge yourself out of your comfort zone, read things that aren't about sports. All of that, I think, will be helpful to people. And talk to as many people in the industry as possible. You might talk to 100 people and get one thing out of each person. If you talk to them for 20 minutes, that doesn't mean you wasted 19 minutes. It means you got something that you can take from.
It's 100 things. Yeah.
You got 100 things that you can put in your back pocket.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Rose or Chris, thank you. Thank you very, very much for all that insight and every detail you provided throughout the interview. I mean, it's been an honor. It's been a joy.
You got it, buddy. It's my pleasure. You did a really good job, man. Really good job. Keep up the good work.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Tyler's Takes from start to finish. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to my podcast on YouTube or whatever platform you are on right now, and share it with your friends. I would love to hear from you, so please feel free to leave a review, give me feedback in the comment section, or send me a message on social media. If you'd like to hear more about my podcast or me, you can follow me on Instagram or TikTok as well. See you next time.